Hello everyone, and welcome back again to another lesson in Management Information Systems. In this lesson I decided actually to push the idea of the address book further from being just a simple console application to a Windows application. As you can see here, I'm using right now Visual Studio 2010, utilizing as well .NET Framework 4.0. Excuse me. Now, I haven't actually changed anything in the applications, so it is still the same from the previous lesson. I still have the same exact code, except for I have changed the console, the write line. I have just simply switched it to throwing new exceptions instead, because I wanted to handle these exceptions in our Windows forms. So we're gonna actually handle the removing a contact or adding a contact to our address book through a we have gonna handle it through a try-catch block. Okay, so in case that an error happened, we have to handle that error, and we have to show to the user a certain message box, let's say, that says, okay, there is an error and you have the same contact, or this contact doesn't exist if you're trying to erase a contact that actually doesn't exist. Excuse me. So let's get started. Now, in order to add a new Windows application in this for this solution, I'm gonna have to right-click, and I'm gonna have to add new project, and I'm gonna grab Windows Forms, and here I'm gonna say, let's say this is going to be my Windows UI, for instance. Now, of course, once I've named it Windows UI, I'm gonna actually right click on this guy, and I'm gonna have to set him up as a startup project. Now, where is it? Here you go. So instead, when I compile and run the application will not run as a console, but it will run as a Windows Forms. Now, there's a very important thing I wanted to mention here, because probably some of you could be confused by now. My Visual Studio looks a little bit different. I mean, even the tabs, and I got this pinning the tabs and all those stuff, and these indentation lines and this highlighting with whatever line I'm on. This is actually, I've achieved it through extensions. So if you go to Tools, Extension Manager, I have installed those three extensions, which is kind of cool. I mean, it helps me out a lot while I'm coding. Indentation or indenting lines is really good, for example, for identifying which part of the code is actually going, under which scope I am, in case I'm writing a little bit big functions. Power productivity tools and power commands, this helps me out. Like when I right click over here, as you can see, I got open command prompt from here, add, remove, sorting the usings and all those stuff. In addition to that, for example, I could when I'm working, I could, for example, like when I try to add a bracket, I immediately get the closing one, and if I am trying, for example, to add a quote as well, I get the closing one right away. And if, for instance, I have a certain line of code, and when I hit Shift Enter, it puts the semicolon and it goes to the next line. Another usage which I was using this thing for, I would just simply go to select a part of the code, let's say, and instead of cut and paste, I could just simply hold the Alt key, and then up and down. So this is down, so I'm moving the code all around instead of just simply cutting it and pasting it. So this is quite easy for me to manage my code through keyboard. Alright, so this is for you who guys could be confused why my Visual Studio looks a little bit different. Excuse me. So let's see the trip of Windows Forms, how Windows Forms is actually running in our system. Now, previously, in the old MFC code or in the old Windows API coding, in order to create a window, you have to, first step is to I don't know, write a huge function to draw the form, draw the size of the form, register it in the system thread. I mean, open a specific system thread for it, give the handle of the window to the operating system, so you could start when the window starts. You can start, for example, playing it with the mouse, changing its position, and so on and so forth. adding, I don't know, some message queues, updating the messaging queues, and so on and so forth. This is really was a huge amount of code. I mean, for regenerating a small window, it really took like 20 lines of codes, let's say. But here in C#, the things here are a little bit different. Of course, there are a lot of details are hidden from you, because .NET Framework takes care of it. And since you will never need to touch it, they expose you only these pieces, which I'm going to show you right now, that you probably need to touch. Okay. So here is how the application starts. So if I have a Windows Form project, if I open the Programs CS, now of course all the time this is a program class. It contains the main function, which is of course it is all the time your starting point of your application. So once you hit Control F5, as you can see here, I don't know, probably this is the it actually your form is being registered. There is a thread is opened for your application alone, and your form is being registered in the Windows system, and the handles and all those stuff are being handled in there. So I mean, for example, in application enable visual styles, this means that your application will grab whatever theme your operating system currently has, and it will simply apply it to it. Okay. Application.run, it actually creates a new thread in your operating system, and it creates and registers the messages and events in the operating system. So for instance, if you have a form that has a button, and when you click on that button does something, let's say shows another form or sends an email or whatever, these stuff has to be registered in the operating system's messaging queue. So once you click on a button, an event happened. Now if you handle that event, your operating system will see, that guy actually handled the event of a button once it's clicked, and he will go inside the messaging queue, perform the messaging queue part, and then he will invoke the function where you actually written the code. Okay, when you click on that button, you send that email, for instance. Okay, so application.run, it actually creates a new thread for your Windows Forms application to survive in this operating system, and you have to pass to it a new object of your form class. Now a form is a class, by the way. Okay, and since everything in Visual Studio, or excuse me, since everything in C# is actually a class, or everything is in .NET Framework is a class, even your integers, your booleans, your stuff all of them are actually class. It's a managed code. Okay, you have to pass a new object of your form. Okay, now let's see how our form looks like. So once the application starts, we come into here, we're on the form. So this is we call the forms constructor. Fine. Now if I go here, I right click and say view code, I see public partial class form1, which inherits from form. Now since actually I'm taking my my current Windows form and I'm modifying a lot of parameters in this form, it is easier to inherit from the form class and then start modifying and handling events and all these stuff. So that's why I'm inheriting from form class. Okay, my class called form1, and you can see here there's a new keyword called partial. We're gonna look at it in a second. But anyway, once you start your application, you see, so program calls a new form. Now here's my constructor, public form1, and it says initialize components. Now where's that function resides? Now I could right click and I could go and say go to definition, or I could, using the extensions which I had, I just simply hold the control key and the function will act like a link, and then when I click on it, it will take me right away to the definition. So once your form is actually being constructed in the memory, you look at it, private initialize components, and here it initializes your form with a text which is called form1. It sets the property to auto scale, so once you try to stretch the form, resize it, it can be resized. Alright? And and probably, and of course initializing it as a container, since your form is actually a small, huge, I mean it's a huge space of a huge area, empty area, which can hold other components, because a form could be considered to be as a container. Okay, now let me hit on the partial part of it. You see this partial class form1, and you see this as well, public partial class. That means that when the compiler sees this, when you create two partial classes, once the application gets compiled, the compiler will merge them right away into one file, or consider them completely as a one file, and runs the application. Also, there are a lot of details behind the partial classes, but majorly what Microsoft suggested, Microsoft guys, when they were making the compiler, they were like discovered that, I mean, partial classes are good for organization reasons. For example, in the Windows Forms, area in C# 1.0, the problem was that your definition of your forms, where your controls are residing, everything, and even your event handlers, all of your Windows code is all packed into one big file, which was quite confusing. Not only confusing, but it was quite cluttered, not organized. So people in the C# compiler, programmers, they were just simply took and they say, okay, we're going to introduce the partial classes, where we can split a single class into two separate files, and then the compiler would later on treat them as one. Now there are a lot of details behind partial classes, but the only thing which concerns us for now is just you make sure that your classes have the same name. Okay, so please do not come over here and then change this to form2. You're gonna ruin the whole idea. And as you can see here, I inherit from form1. I mean, excuse me, form1 inherits from form, and it only inherits it only once here. Do not go over here and start writing it down again. It inherits from forms. You're gonna get an error. Excuse me. The part where the dispose comes from, okay, the dispose, this part, please do not touch, okay, unless you know what you are doing, okay, because this part is a form is a managed resource, all right, and once you actually close the form, the whole form has to be cleared out from the memory, including your buttons, including your objects. Everything has to be completely cleared out from the memory, so it has to be destructed. So all the resource has been used by your Windows application. Once you close it, it just has been disposed from the memory, okay, on closing right away. So, and of course, yes, before I forget, please as well do not type anything in here. I mean, let me show you what I'm talking about. If you go to Form Designer and you go to Toolbox, excuse me, if I put a button here, okay, when I go to the Form Designer CS, I see that I created a new button, okay, and this button has certain details: the location, the name, the size, tab index, the text, and the visual styles. Okay, now I could type any code here, int I equals to 0. Okay. Anyway, excuse me. Okay, assigned is never been used. Okay. If I try to, sorry, let me just. This is like Camtasia's glitch. If I try to move this button over here again, and I save this, you see the integer which I've created here just disappeared. This is because whatever modification I do in my user interface, simply the form, excuse me, Visual Studio will just simply regenerate the code again, and regenerates the file, almost the file again. So it is meaningless to start typing something in here or try to write some code in here, because this code is never meant to be touched and meant to be only handled by the designer. Whatever parameters you would like to add, you start adding it in here. Okay, so designer, form1.designer, just leave it alone, do not touch it. It just only In case you had an error, for example, a dangling delegate, for example, pointing to a function that doesn't exist, we're gonna see this, how we can solve this problem. You're gonna have to see it. You're gonna have, for example, to erase that line of code or something like that. But basically, you do not write a lines of code in here unless you are defining a new properties. Let's say this button1 dot whatever allow drop, for example. I believe it's a boolean. So you say true. I hope it will remain in place. So if I believe if I came here and let's say try to modify the position, it's Control S. Where is it? Ah, even this one has been just rejected. Oh no, here it is. You see? So it's mentioned here. Now, what I wanted to say is, you see, even when I typed it down there, it was simply just thrown up upstairs because the Visual Studio recreates the whole thing again. Now, I advise you, just when you would like to modify a property in your buttons or in whatever control it is, you go to what is called the properties pane. So if I go here, I select the button, and if I press F4, I get the properties pane. Now here, if you would like to seek for the probably allow drop as a behavior, you see, I can enable it from here instead of just typing it in the code. Whatever property you would like to access, almost all of them, you can find them here in the properties pane, specifically for the button, let's say. Alright? Now in the properties as well, we could help notice that, for example, the major important property here is the text, and the major important one as well is the name of the control. Now there's a very important thing you have to know about Windows Forms in .NET Framework. There is a consistency among the controls. So every control has a name, and every control, almost all of them, has a text. Okay, so if a form has a text over here, and if you'd like to access this text, you say form1 dot text, because it's a property. A button, if you would like to access the button text, say button1 dot text, which is the name of the control, dot text. Okay, now it is highly important that you always name your controls. Please do not create a Windows application that has 10 buttons, and then every button name is button 1, button 2, button 3, button 15. Like it's really ridiculous. It doesn't have any sense. So please always try to name your controls. So if I select my button here, let's say I'm gonna call it OK. This is the name of the button. Usually I like to add a prefix before the name of the control. So I'm gonna call it BTN, which is the button, and OK. And here in the text, to resemble for the user what it is, because BTN OK is the name of the control where I'm gonna access it from code if I needed to. Okay, and here is the text for the user, just for representation. So I could put here OK. If you want to, you could put add or remove if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. But basically, it is of course advice, and of course much more intelligent, to give the name of the control which represents the function of it. So for example, if you have btn OK, it doesn't mean that you should put the text as remove. I mean, there are a lot of common sense stuff that probably we can agree on. So I'm gonna call this OK. Let me expand the toolbox, and let us do a very simple example. Let's say I'm gonna have a label, and let's say I'm gonna have a text box. Where are you? There you go. So if I expand this text box and I look into its properties, now a text box should have a name. So txt, let's say message. Let's say I'm gonna type whatever inside this message box, and when I hit OK, I'm gonna rename this label to whatever message I have here. So txt message is the name of my control. Please do not touch the text property, because whatever you're gonna type in here is gonna be appeared here, where actually the user should type in there. Okay, so let's see, btn okay, btxe message, and of course, since I'm going to access the label from the code, I would like as well to name it. So lbl message. All right, let's see. So excuse me. Now, if I run this application, give it a second, and I drag it over here, if I type something, nothing happens. Okay, and this is because my form has been registered in my form and everything is just fine, but there is no event handled for that button. I mean, Windows sees that I'm clicking on that button, and it sees it because actually it keeps track of my cursor, by the way, because Windows keeps track all the time of your cursor, and sees when I click on it, when I click on my mouse, it just tries to detect what is exactly under my cursor. So what is under my cursor? Right now is a button. So okay, if I'm under a button, if my cursor is is above a button, I just simply, once I click it, the button should be pushed down, which is, again, the Windows operating system handles it for me, or whatever .NET framework is handling it. But anyway, but when I click on it, nothing happens. That's because the Windows is trying to seek for the part where you said, okay, once I click on a button, I'm gonna do something. This didn't exist yet, and we have to create it. So we have to handle the event of clicking. Now, in order to handle an event of clicking, I have first to select my button, and I have to go to the Events tab in my Properties pane, and excuse me, you have Click Event. And as you see here in the bottom, click occurs when the component is clicked. So here are two ways of handling it. You either double click over here, or you double click over the button. Now, double clicking over the button will actually invoke the default event, which is the click. But if you wanted to handle any different event, you have to go to that event and double click on it. So you can double click on it in that way. So double click, and as you can see here, a function has been created for me. Now let me collapse this one, and in here, if I look into the designer, now watch this. You see, an event has been registered in my system. This is like, you can call it right now here is an example of delegates or an events, which is actually a function pointers. As you can see here, I added into my system event handling systems. I've added to my button an event which is called click, and it calls that function btn OK underscore click. So once I click on that button, this function is going to be executed because of that line of code. Now, if in case that you commented that part and I try to compile this, Control-Shift-B, I get that error. Windows Form 1 doesn't contain a definition for btn OK underscore click, or no extension method. Now, if I double click on this one, error. You see, it just tries to find a function which doesn't exist. So you have to make sure that your function is there. In case if you didn't like an event and you just simply erase it, okay, I made it by mistake, you can, for example, erase the function, and then you come here over that line and erase it, or which is the cleaner way, you just go here, select that one, and you right click on the event, and you just say reset. Now, probably because of the, let me try to uncomment that part. Control-Shift-B. Oh man. Okay. Now I see click has it's already pointing to that function. Now if I right click on it, I just can say reset, and it will just simply take out this part, and will take out this part if and only if this code is empty. So if I didn't have any definition here, let's say like this, right now this function contains a code. This code will never be erased, okay? But if this part is clean, then the code will be erased automatically. Okay, take care about that. Now, Now bear with me here, I know that I'm covering a lot of details, but it's really there are a lot of stuff that really concerns Windows Forms, and I really would like to gather it all together at one step, so bear with me here. So in case if I double click on OK, so if I click on OK button, I would like to take the message from the text box which I've written and assign it to the label. So let me go over here, let me close this, and in here I'm gonna type like this: LBL message dot text equals to txt message dot text. This is pretty straightforward code. This is all what I need to do in order to grab a text from a text box, just put it, throw it out there in the label. Now as you can see here, if I Control F5 this, so when I type hello Windows, if I hit OK, it just grabs and says hello Windows. So if you look at my code, it says like this: take the message or take the text from my text box, take the text which I have typed in here from my text box, assign it to the label, the label's text. So whatever I written in here as a text, it will go into the label's text and being copied there. Now what if I told you, for example, to grab this text instead and put it inside the Windows form, inside the form's caption or the form's title? It's really that straightforward and easy. I just could say this dot text equals to txt message dot text. This dot text, because I'm actually in the forms class, so I'm currently talking to the current object which I am in. Now watch this. If I say hello Windows again, get it right, and when I hit OK, as you can see here as well, my Windows form has been renamed. The title of my Windows form has been renamed. Now as you can see here, it is very important to notice that there is a consistency in my application or in the .NET Framework classes. As you can see here, in order to access any text of any control, I have to say the control name.text. All controls has a name. All control has a location on the form. Okay. All controls most of the controls share a lot of properties together. There are controls which can contain other controls like group boxes and so on, as we can see in upcoming minutes, in next couple minutes. And there are, for example, controls that can hold a collection of data, like combo boxes, like list boxes, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna right now observe or see these controls in action. Now let me close this form, and let's right now start working in our on a real application or a real example, which is going to be our address book. And as you can see here, when I deleted my controls, watch this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the events as well are deleted. You see, the events are already deleted, there's nothing, the buttons are gone. But since I wrote a code here, the Microsoft guys just said, okay, probably I wrote some important code here, so I will not delete it for him. The guy will just simply figure it out on his own. So I'm gonna just simply don't need that code, so I'm gonna delete it. Oops, I hope that okay, now it's fine. Okay, so here is the following scenario. Let me close this and that. Now first of all, I hate when I see a form called Form1. So this is gonna be address book. Okay, and I always like to name my classes properly, so I'm gonna rename this into main, whatever. I'm gonna call it main, and please rename the code as well to main. So right now it's not gonna be called Form1. If I look here, if I look here, if I select the form and I call, as far as I remember, F7, I'll get into the code. As you can see here, public partial class main. Okay, now if I compile and run this, everything is just gonna be fine. Okay, now here's the scenario. What we're gonna have here, we're gonna have a small menu where we can have file, edit, and help. Under file, we're gonna have new, which is gonna have a sub menu, which is gonna be adding a new, creating a new professional contact or personal contact, saving a file, opening a file, and exit. In the edit menu, we're gonna have find and delete a contact, and in the help, we're gonna just have about. Okay. Now, if you notice, now let me actually type this nicely, much better, in a better way for you in a small notepad. So, what I'm gonna have here is a file, so you guys can be following me. So, under a file, we're gonna have new, and there's a sub menu which is gonna be called excuse me, professional contact. I hope I spelled it right. And another sub menu which is gonna be personal contact. Afterwards, we're gonna have edit. Edit is gonna contain delete or remove contact. It's up to you how to name it. And another menu, another sub menu, excuse me, is gonna have man, hold on a second. Okay, find a contact or search for a contact. Oh yes, I forgot. Here's gonna be as well. We're gonna have to add under the file. We should have this. I'm considering like a bonus. Open file, open an address book. Save an address book. So save your address book to a file, and exit. Okay, and here, oops, I don't need to save this. And here, I'm gonna have in my help, I'm gonna have just only about. Okay, so this is the structure of my menu. That's what I'm gonna try to recreate here. Now, excuse me. Now, for every menu, we have a shortcut key, almost like, for example, when I say macro in Notepad++, which I'm using here. As you can see, there is always a shortcut key most of the time for the most used functions, and it is a good idea to give the user the ability of like the ability of executing certain functions using keyboard if your user could be happening to be a keyboard ninja or whatever. So you need really you have to give this ability to the user that he has to execute functions through a keyboard, as well as you're gonna have to take care about the mouse guys, because if they want, for example, to execute certain functions through mouse. So please do not provide a Windows application that only relies on keyboard, and do not provide a Windows application that only relies on mouse. You have to take care of both. Okay. So here's the keyboard shortcut key which I planned for them. So Control plus N and Control plus Shift plus N. This is for creating person. Now please as well follow the standards. Please do not put the open as Control P, because Control P is of course printing. So try to follow the standards. Control plus O. Save is Control plus S, and exit usually it's Alt F4, Alt plus F4. Some application, excuse me, some applications, let's say, put it Alt Q or Q, or I don't know, whatever other keyboard shortcut keys could happen, to you. But usually it's Alt F4. Delete, this is gonna be for contact. Find could be F3 or Control F. I'm gonna just keep it Control F because Windows already has its own F3. But anyway, and for the help, I don't need to put for the about any keyboard shortcut keys. If you have a help in your application, let's say your application is really huge and you have a help for it, excuse me, have the F1 of course for the help. Okay, and please follow the structure. Do not, for example, put the edit before the file or put the help in the beginning. If you look at least in here, file, edit, and then search view, blah blah blah, and then the help is at the end. Okay, I mean, you can see it as well here in Visual Studio. File, edit, view, and then help is actually at the end. So please try to keep the same structure. If you want to do your own standard of your own UI, then you have to change the whole idea of menus. There are only two standards in the world. We have the menus part and the ribbon standard in normal application. If you don't like this or that, then try to do your own thing, but do not make it similar to this or to menus or similar to ribbon, because mostly users are just simply trying, to follow the standards. If I would like, for example, to make a new file in ribbon, it's quite obvious where they have to go to. In menus, they know where to go to, and if you're gonna make your own standard, then try to make it as obvious as possible. So let me try to start creating the same user interface which I described in here. So I'm gonna grab the menu strip, control, and click once. So I clicked here once, and I will click here once. Now in here, I'm gonna write here the name file. Now while I'm at it, if you haven't noticed yet, if I hit the Alt key only once, I get the underscores over these guys, and when I hit Alt F, this menu expands and I get as well the underscores under each one of those menu items. So in order to do this trick, if you wanted to do it, you just simply put the ampersand before the letter which you want to put an underscore before to. So new is gonna have an ampersand before the N, and since the menu items actually has been separated through they are grouped by grouped by buttons, and then they are separated through something which is called separators like this. So you see new open, and then you find the separator, and then add in the separator. Saving is at a certain category, if you will. Exits as its own category, and every category is separated with a small thin line which you can see over here. This is called a separator. Now in order to get this one, when you have a menu like this, let's say I type new, and then it creates for me a small empty area where I can type my other menu. If I go here by mouse, you can see this arrow. If I click on it, I just can choose separator, and boom, I got separator. Now of course these separators could be moved all the way around. So let's say I wanted to put open with the new as in Visual Studio done here. So I can just simply grab this open, drag it upstairs, and that's it. And the separator is in the bottom. Now I can put the save, and of course I would like to add these small little things like these ampersands, and save. And I'm gonna make a new separator, and I'm gonna put here exit. And of course I would like to put, sometimes people put under the X, sometimes people put under the E, but since my application is really quite small, I was just going to put it under the E for now. Now new has a submenu as we agreed upon. So as you can see here, new, professional, contact, and personal contact. Now in order to create this, I have to go and select new. Once I select new, the menu item itself, as you can see here, type here or the sub-menu item appears right away automatically. So say here I can just type professional contact, and here's gonna be personal contact. Now since we have those two sub-menus done, as you can see here, now I would like to add the keyboard shortcut keys. Now in order to add them, I will go and select the menu item which I need, hit F4 to go to the properties pane, and in the way down in the bottom, if you are in case choose a categorized view, you have an alphabetical view and you have categorized view. In the miscellaneous, I find the shortcut keys, and here you can say, okay, I would like to do the Control plus N if my alphabet help me, here you go. And then if I go out, let me try to find it. Okay, let me try to run the application. I know it's kind of interesting. Small workspace here. File, new. As you can see here, I have Control N. Now, whatever I press Control N on my keyboard, this function will be executed right away. Now, this one way of adding a keyboard shortcut key. The other way is if you are lazy and you don't want to really to find the stuff and you would like to go faster. Control plus Shift plus N, and you will get the same effect. Now, of course, please type something which exists, because in my case, as you can see here, when I typed it, you see everything is just, you know, selected appropriately because I used the, you know, the standard. Do not type, for example, Control plus hello. It cannot happen. So it will not work. If I choose open, open is gonna have Control plus O. Save is gonna be Control plus S. And exit is gonna be Alt plus F4. So when I Control F5 this, File, New, Professional Contact, Personal Contact, Open, Save, and Alt F4, and everything with the separators, so we follow the standard in a nice way. Now I'm not quite happy with the form size, so I'm going to resize it a little bit. Excuse me. And let me go upstairs here and type the edit menu, which is going to have, excuse me, I have to have the ampersand. Remove a contact, which is going to have an, you know, like before the R, so underscore under the R. Find contact. Okay, and let's add the keyboard shortcut keys while we are at it. So delete and find the contact is going to be Control plus F, and for the help, well, I could type the ampersand right away. Help. And in here, I'm gonna just type in about, which is not gonna have a keyboard shortcut key for it. So, File, Edit, Help. Let me run this application and have a look at it. So we have File, New, Open, Save, and blah blah blah. Edit, Remove, and Contact, and About. If I hit the Alt key, I get this underscore, and when I hit the down, so Alt F, you get, I don't know, the menus, and oh, I forgot the professional personal contact. Now here's an interesting thing I would like to show you as well. Now watch this. Save main and save all. Now you see S and S. All of these guys begin with letter S. Now if I hit the Alt F, you see underscore. There's underscore under the S, but in here it's not. It's under the A over here, and it's under L over there. If I say, let me modify something over here so you can see it. Let's say I'm gonna put a S under this one. Now watch this. If I hit Alt F S, right now I saved it. Now if I hit Alt F and probably Alt F A, right now I have to save as. Okay, so in this case, professional contact and a personal contact, both of them, they begin with these underscores. So if I come over here, I could just say that the professional contact is gonna have underscore under the P, so before the P, and personal, I just could put it under the C. I mean, it doesn't matter. Or I could just put it under the E or R. So under the R, let's say. Okay, so Control F5 that. I have to put the S out. But anyway, Alt F, and then here you go. Okay, so we got this nicely. Alright, let me just knock out this guy. Now I believe, okay, let me just add a couple controls here. Now we all agreed that a contact, all contacts, let's see, contacts has first name, nickname, first name, family name, phone, and email. As for the personal contact, we have a birth date additional, and for the professional contact we have the company name. Now close all but this. Yes. Now if I go and say Shift F7, I go to the designer, from the code to the designer. We're gonna put right now the input fields where the user is gonna type in when he tries to add a contact. Now the only thing where you can go through and you can actually type in nicely, a nice way, to input some certain data is text boxes. This is the conventional way of putting stuff and pass it through the program, so the program can just try to save it in a file, database, blah blah blah, anything. So if I come over here and I say where is my, of course every text box should have a label, by the way, so we're gonna have a label and we're gonna have a text box. Now the labels are used in order to tell what are these controls are for. If you go here and you go to the options, this is a label. This is actually a checkbox with a text on it. You see, this is a label. If you don't have a label in here, it will never tell the user what are you doing with that option. Okay, so it is quite important to have a label, to label your controls for the user so he can recognize. Imagine that you are logging into a website and you don't know where is the password and login field, or let's say you are in a registration form and there are a lot of text boxes in there and you don't know, shall I put my name in there or shall I put my credit card number in there? You have to be quite you have to define all these stuff. I know these stuff are common sense, but it is really necessary because there are some people, when they are doing stuff fast, they really don't realize the problem, so take care about that. I selected the label and I pressed F4. Now I could, hold on a second, how many properties we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. This is for birth date or company name. So 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. By the way, I selected both of the controls, and I hold the control button and then simply just click once and drag, and then you get the other ones. So excuse me. Now let me rename those. This label is gonna be the text of it is gonna be nickname, and please do not forget the column, okay, as you can see here it's a little bit away. Here's gonna be first name. You could separate them if you want to be correct. Family name or last name. Phone. Email. And here, this is gonna be like optional thing, but anyway I'm gonna default it to company name. Now once the user trying to create a new professional contact, this label is gonna be a company name. If I'm trying to and this box is gonna, whatever I'm putting inside that box is gonna be going to the company name. If I'm creating a new object of a personal contact, then I'm gonna have this label changed to birth date, and whatever I put in the text box is gonna be a birth date. Okay, so these text boxes and the last text box and label are gonna be named. Otherwise, these guys, on the other hand, these labels, since I'm not gonna access them through code, I will not care of naming them. Okay, and of course, please keep the distances. There's always, Microsoft gave you the guidelines. You see, there's a guideline, and when I go here, I snap the text box, and as you can see here, there's a small line, short line in the middle of between these text boxes. That means that I kept the standard distances between the two text boxes. Please keep it that way. Alright? And of course, please make the label on the same line as the text box. You see, there's a pinky line, which means that the text of the label is on the same line as the text of the text box. So please take care about that too. And I'm gonna keep the standard distance here. Okay, fine. Okay, excellent and excellent. Now I believe it's gonna be a good idea if I stop right there. So I will just simply stop here, and then in the next lesson I'm gonna show you what is gonna be the scenario, how we're gonna add contacts to our address book, and how we're gonna handle the exceptions and all those stuff in our Windows form. Show a message box in case there is a mistake I have done in there. Alright, so see you